Hi, George.
Hi.
It's good to be back. Here we are.
It is good to be back.
You know what I want to say is we're at this point officially 2 weeks from Thanksgiving.
Yeah, we are.
2 weeks. Are you excited?
We are. Yeah. You know what I'm excited about?
Can't really have family.
Yeah, that's and I know everybody's going to be like, oh, that's so taboo. That's so
I love
bad.
it.
I'm kind of like, I don't have to drive anywhere.
I know.
I don't have to wait in a line.
Right.
I don't have to take my shoes off and get scanned.
Or argue about politics. Nothing.
Nothing.
You just argue with your parents.
Right.
Scott, same thing, right?
You can argue about politics wherever you go.
Well, you can, but I won't at my house.
Especially on Facebook. That's what you should do on Thanksgiving is just get on Facebook.
Facebook Live your dinner.
Yeah. Facebook Live your dinner.
Yeah.
And call it like dinner with Trump or something and see how many people you get.
It would be the worst.
I'll tell you, it's like Zoom. I think Zoom, everybody's downplaying Zoom now because they think there's going to be, this vaccine. But I think Zoom is a new habit. So I think a lot of people will be Zooming together
they will.
all their dinners. Yeah. I'm going to be Zooming my friends in the UK for sure.
Are you
is
really?
That legal?
Yeah.
Can you? Is that? What? You can't Zoom your friends in Alabama. I think that's where it is.
Oh really?
Yeah.
But here's the thing. Yesterday on Facebook, on the old Facebook, I put out there that don't be a dick and put raisins in your stuffing at Thanksgiving. Do you know anybody who puts fruits or vegetables? Or not vegetables, just fruits or raisins in their stuffing?
I do, and I think fruit is I have to be honest, except if it's a dairy product. Ice cream really. Besides ice cream, I think fruit is a standalone condiment. I don't like fruit in my remember Chunky with the
I remember Chunky.
Who wants cherries and stuff in their chocolate?
No. Ambrosia. Remember ambrosia salads with the fruits and all the marshmallow.
Yeah, I'm old school that way.
I am too.
I like to certain things like peanut butter and chocolate. Great,
right?
Love it. Like you mash the peanuts up.
Yeah, you get your chocolate out of my peanut butter.
Yeah,
that's the old commercial.
Yeah, and it goes into we can't really use brand names on this podcast, so it goes into we
can't use brand names.
It goes into like George's peanut butter disc or something like that. But,
But no, don't do that to people. Don't poison the stuffing. And anyway, that's enough. Let's get on with the show. I know somebody you might want to Zoom with for Thanksgiving. How about your guest?
Yeah, I think so. First of all, welcome back, everybody. We love to do a little banter.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for subscribing to the show, for the emails we've been getting.
Yeah.
We've been getting some really great tips also. So please keep them coming. I think the show and the format is starting to take shape. And we're getting a lot of listeners that are actually getting something from this because they're just listening to what great people are doing.
And that's what you want people to do, is just listen.
Exactly. Right. We're not telling you what to do. Just listen and take what you will from it.
Right.
And there's really almost nobody better than our next guest to listen to, because what a journey and story.
I'm excited to hear it.
Our guest has Rebekah Kondrat, and Rebekah and I, full disclosure, used to work together at a certain big fruit-titled company, the biggest one in the world. And we had a great time doing it. But Rebekah started off in a very different place. Before that, moved into retail, became an amazing retail operator, and just gathered information, took that information, taught herself so much, and then went on to start her own company. And that's all I'm going to say about it, because the best person to tell this story is Rebekah. So welcome, Rebekah.
Hi, Rebekah.
Thank you. Hi. Hey, guys. Happy to be here.
We're
Thanks
happy
for
to have
that generous intro.
Oh, please.
So lovely.
And live from her bunk beds.
That's right.
Yeah.
Live from my son's room with the bunk beds in the background.
Yeah, it's a great backdrop.
It really is.
There's a little tent. I don't know if you can tell. There's a tent.
Oh yeah, we see
on
it.
the bunk bed.
Okay.
Remember when you used to sleep in the tent?
Sure. No.
I don't know if you had those. I did.
We made forts when we were young.
Yeah,
with
we
blankets
did
and pillows. Yeah.
Forts
sleep outside, and then it became too wet, and we ran inside at 3 in the morning.
Yes.
I love
now
it.
It's indoor forts, but yes, urban forts.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I guess story-wise, why don't we just start with, not from the very beginning, but we could start from your dance background, ballerina background, and how you made that transition to becoming this amazing retail operator. And let's just start there and go from there, if that's all right with you.
Yeah, it's quite a story. I mean, so I grew up doing classical ballet, moved to New York, trained at Joffrey Ballet School, kind of came to a point. I feel like it's sort of strange because the height of, one's dance career is in your 20s. for a lot of people. There are some people who are lucky enough to go on and do it for a little bit longer than that. But really, there came a moment where I had to make a decision about, do I do this for the rest of my life? And by do this, I mean, do I run the audition circuit? Do I get rejected a lot? Do I move to a small town so that I can join their company so that I can then join a bigger company and a bigger company? The dance world is tough. And, there was this kind of moment here in New York where I was like, I don't want to leave. And the likelihood of me going to ABT is quite small because just frankly, by the numbers, it's quite small for everyone.
Right.
And so I kind of made this like baby step into operations by way of stage management.
Okay. For a show within the dance field that you were in?
So kind of. At first, I started to do lighting. I was an assistant lighting designer for the designer for ABT's second company. Okay. And so I did that, did not like the creative design work, but I liked the operations side of it. And so then from there went into stage management and did some touring shows and whatnot. And some like musical shows, which was really fun. Got to meet some cool people. So, kind of did that. And then went over to retail, in truth, for the same reason a lot of people end up in retail, which is like, I need to make money. I can do it part-time. Yep. It has flexible hours, so I went off and started in a very flexible retailer, very well known, of the Java persuasion. And, so I kind of went over there and did that and just fell in love with it and started managing stores, managing multiple stores, managing store openings, build outs, hiring, staffing, training. I mean, you kind of know some of it, which you alluded to in the intro.
For sure.
But, that's kind of the high level version of the journey, which, has been a lot of fun.
So what did you bring though from I love the stage management piece. So it's like you're in this position and you're like, I don't want to do all this, but I can still stay in it and still have a touch. And we'll talk later towards the end about if you can talk about it, what you might be doing in the future, which is really kind of cool. But what was like transferable to your first role in operations at the Java company? Like when you left and you're like, boom, I'm going to do this. What was kind of transferable? Because I think a lot of people don't realize they can move into different things and already have certain skills that can apply. Yeah.
Well, I mean, gosh, so much of it. So in stage management, you have to oversee the team that is, kind of doing the load in, the set design. You have to deal with that side of it, which is very kind of like technical nuts and bolts. Mm-hmm. But then you also are the main voice and liaison of the director to the artists, to the actors and the players in any kind of given, performance. And so I think the ability to deal with multiple personalities, once you get into retail, you not only have your employees that have personalities, you have your customers that have personalities, you have the C-suite that oversees your location that does periodic visits that has their own set of personalities as well. Yep. So I think a lot of it was honestly this idea, and we've talked about this, about the human relations side that I think is frankly a little bit underappreciated and undervalued. That I really think was critical to me being able to acclimate so quickly into like a business environment from an artistic environment.
Right. And so what would you say were like 2 or 3 or even 1? I mean, if you can go up to 3, that's great. But things that you taught yourself as you went through after you left stage management and went to these bigger retailers and even where you and I met and worked, what would you say are like 2 or 3 things that you taught yourself or that you learned there that are going into where you are now, which we'll get into in a little bit?
Yeah, I think, the first one was just, this is like, I'm such an operator and I love that side so much, was just like master project management. Like I had to get the tools, whether it was, and I've tried several different things, but starting off with kind of these nuts and bolts checklists to, larger things like Gantt charts and, not to like put your listeners to sleep, but I get super jazzed about that stuff. We'll nerd out on it a little bit. Mm-hmm. But, I think all of those things are really important to communicate what is going on to all of the different stakeholders as whether you're building a set or whether you're building a store.
Right.
Right. Like all of the stakeholders need to know what's going on at any given time, because that gives them confidence in your abilities to execute. And so I think that it really started with project management. And then I would say, the next thing was just like, I had to figure out how to motivate people. Yeah. Like that's, and that honestly came from, reading a lot of books, listening to a lot of podcasts. Once those came out, when I first started, they weren't a thing.
Listening,
listening, reading blogs, like talking to people who were really great motivators. Like I saw that their teams were invested in them. And so I think that one was just clutch in the success that I saw at Java, at Fruit, at, other places where I've been. And so I think that is not to be kind of underutilized, that skill of motivating others. So.
No, I agree. And that's sometimes the toughest thing, because as a project manager, I was going to ask you too, it's like, how do you manage the egos? Because, there's always a point of view, and you and I kind of grew up in a time where it wasn't as it's a little more patient today, but when we were doing that, it was a little more, correct me if I'm wrong, my way or the highway. And the problem is you have to juggle these multiple egos because people have a certain taste level, or I feel it should be this way, or this is what, and you're just kind of like that middle person, because you just got to get the job done. So balancing that.
Yeah, I think the key to that, and honestly, still learning and getting better at it every day, is just to get down to the root of like, what do you actually want? Like you person that I am, whether it's the CEO of this company or the director of this show, or, whoever the regional manager that I report to, in the early days, I think it's ultimately, what do you want? What do you need to be successful? Because if I can help them be successful, they will always kind of bring me along, give me more responsibility, move me through the ranks, quote unquote, so to speak, especially in those like hierarchical organizations. And I think everybody has a desire, right? They all have a desired outcome. Figure out what it is. Yeah.
So being a trained ballerina and growing up in that business, does that give you a little like insight on how to deal with egos? Because I'm guessing there's a lot of ego in ballet.
Really?
Yeah, right. I only know a handful of, and it not in ballet isn't like we saw in the movie Black Swan, but
I was thinking center stage, but yes, that too.
Right. But I'm sure you must have taken something from your training and your years in ballet on how to deal with people.
Yeah. I mean, yes, you're correct. A lot of the personalities in ballet are very strong, shall we say.
Yeah.
And, I think the thing that really ballet taught me that I'm so grateful for is just this like grit. There is a lot of rejection. There's a lot of unfiltered criticism of you, of your body, of your dance style, of your, personality, etc. And so, I think that even just like having the grittiness to like fail at a piece of communication, have someone get mad at you, go back to them and say, hey, that didn't work out the way that I thought, that didn't come out the way that I intended, let's talk it out, instead of kind of like walking away and ignoring it and then walking on eggshells around that person for the next 6 months until they get over it. Like that, nobody gets anything done that way,
right,
in business. And so I think ballet just gave me this really thick skin.
Oh yeah,
that
thicker than most.
Well.
Yeah.
That's a really great point. So we've gone from ballet being a master of retail operations and project management. What was the I want you to talk about your company. I think everybody needs to know about it. But what was the point that you said it's time for me to make this change? So like, what drove you to make the change and be like, you know what? It's been great working for all these different people. I want to make a transition. I think a lot of people would love to know, like, at that point, when did you decide to do it? And then more importantly, how? How did you start doing it?
Yeah. So I think just reflecting on this as I've been over the last couple of months, it's interesting to me because earlier in my career, I was very risk averse. And the older I've gotten and the further along in my career I've gotten, I've become less risk averse. And I think it's the opposite for some people, not everyone, right? So like I wanted very stable companies. I was afraid to work for a startup. Finally, I then worked for a startup, and then I went on to work for 3 more startups and, kind of had been tiptoeing ever closer to entrepreneurship. And, what really did it for me is immediately before this, I was with a larger kind of consulting agency and, was running a lot of the projects. Okay. And I mean, truthfully, I think probably, things may have turned out differently where I may have just ended up overseeing the arm of the consultancy that was doing all of the retail projects or something like that. But COVID really made me make a decision. Yeah. It was kind of like, okay, so, we're going to shut this down was, the founder made that decision. And I was like, okay, I can go in-house with a brand. Again, I certainly have, enough knowledge and, whatnot to do that. Or I can kind of take what I've learned over the last really like 20 years and I can help a lot of different brands. And that was more exciting to me than the former. And so I think it was almost like it forced my hand a little bit, right? Which I'm very grateful for. 4, 5 months into this thing on my own. That's great. So, happy to have been forced into this situation.
And we hear that a lot with a lot of people we've spoken to, people pivoting in this COVID. And you hear that people say, COVID taught me to. And I think that's fantastic because even in the business I'm in with Comedy at the Carlson, we've had to pivot 3 times. And now we show movies. Right. We can't even do comedy because it's illegal in New York State.
It goes back to that theme of if your back's against the wall, what are you going to do? Yeah. And if you don't have that escape hatch, it's like you're either going to eventually stand back up or just sit on the street, right? And your back's against the wall and you've got to do something. So Rebekah, tell us about what you're building. Tell us about it.
Yeah. So I started Kondrat Retail earlier this year, and really just like wanting to help D2C companies. That's kind of my focus. I'll work with anyone, of course, but really like D2C is where I see me being able to lend the most help them clarify their vision for retail. Yep. And then because I am an operator, I actually am not just a strategist. I can get in there and get my hands dirty and like run some of the operations, whether that's an on-ramp to, hiring someone as a director of retail, like, let me get you ready for that person. Or, it's kind of a long-term relationship. I've done both. So I think it's everything from overseeing store build outs and concepting to really clarifying what does your customer feel when they walk into your store? What do you want that experience to be? What is your brand ethos in the physical sense? Because a lot of them have it digitally. They have this great digital presence, amazing graphics, wonderful products, but now it's like you have to actually manifest it in front of someone's face and have their hands hold it. And a lot of them have just not dealt with that realm before.
Right. So because now, you don't have the call it the advantage of brick and mortar, like a showcase or a showplace, or now it's like the content used to be stores, but now your content is online. And to your point, a lot of people are like content. It took me forever to get Instagram going for me, and I still suck at it.
How about Twitter?
Well, yeah, no, God, don't get me started.
Twitter.
Yeah, no good.
It's a horrible story.
Not yet.
It's a whole show on its own.
But so any early direct to consumer trends you're seeing with the whole COVID situation and all the false starts of there's a vax, there's not a vax, there might be a vax. Yeah. Like people I think are in this for the long haul. So are there any like 2 or 3 trends you're seeing yet or things that you've been working on with your clients?
Yeah, I think the first really big one, and to be totally honest, I think this was trending in this direction before, and a lot of these things were, right? People say COVID took whatever was already happening and just accelerated it by 3 to 5 years, So
kind of like my last relationship. Yeah. Which is over.
COVID forced your hand.
Oh, yeah, sure did. Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's fine.
Oh, little Huba.
I think we're seeing this kind of de-emphasis on these very traditional, what I'll call traditional flagship environments, these 60,000 square foot, 20,000 square foot, even locations. And they're moving them out of the city centers and they're moving them to kind of this local neighborhood because community is really the next frontier. Like people are, going to be commuting less even after the vaccine. They're going to commute less into work because there'll be some sort of flexible remote policy. Many, many brands and tech companies in particular have announced that they will do that. They will move out of large, expensive city centers and move out to the suburbs. Not everyone. City centers will remain vibrant. I believe New York will be back 100%. Like I just
sure,
don't
in a few years.
Naysayers.
Yeah,
totally.
I agree.
In a few years, it's going to take some time.
Yeah.
And so I think now there's this we can actually go where our customers live instead of just being where they work and play, right? So, I think that is a big shift that will happen. And the second thing that's tied to it is this idea of fulfillment and final mile are becoming exceptionally important.
Yeah.
Whether that is buy online, pick up in store capabilities, which frankly, because of the way that tech has been set up for a lot of these D2C younger brands, they don't have the system capability to implement something like BOPUS or curbside pickup. Those are going to be really important. Final mile, like same day delivery is going to be really important. Mm-hmm. And guess what? If your stores are already located in communities where your customers live, they then become mini distribution centers. Right. And so, but you have to have the tech infrastructure. You have to have the labor planning in order to do that. Right. So I think those are two things that we're going to see. The third thing, which I have mixed feelings about, but I do actually think it's going to happen, is we'll see another what I call pop-up palooza. I don't know if you remember, maybe it was 5 or 7 years ago at this point. Oh yeah, it was all the rage to do the pop-up. Yep. Right, like Warby Parker did the bus tour. Yep. That kicked off this whole we have to do a pop-up. We have to do pop-ups, and it's you pop the store up for 3 months. It looks really crappy because you get cheap fixtures because you don't want to spend money because it's only 3 months, or you actually spend money on the build out and then you end up losing money on the opportunity. And so I'm not a huge fan of very, very short-term pop-ups for that reason. However, I do think we'll see a return because of the retail favorability for things like short-term percentage rent deals and so forth. Yep. And keeping, and when you think about, and we're going to talk about social media in a minute, but when you think about social media and attention spans, it kind of plays into that. And it's really interesting, the pop-up thing for me, and please, Rebekah, correct me if I'm wrong. I believe one of the initial attractions to it was before YSL was bought out, YSL was doing these temporary shops in these rundown areas of Paris, and the quote unquote elite heard about it, and they would get in their Mercedes and BMWs and cram into this lousy part of Paris and go to the store, and then everybody would hear about it and they would show up 3 days later and it was gone. Yes. And then YSL did it again and again. So this whole pop, I'm not 100% sure that was the start of the phenomenon, but I know that when I was in fashion at the time, that was we got to find a dingy warehouse that's rat infested and let's put our clothes in there for 3 days. Yeah. That was the thing, right? Yeah. I mean, that I think, so there's two sides to pop-ups, right? Yeah. There's the YSLs of the world that truthfully, they already have a rabid customer base. So they don't need it for customer acquisition. They need it for brand coolness factor. And it's that scarcity thing. But then there's the other side where the D2C brands, you can only grow so much with paid social, which I know we want to talk about, but at some point you have to do something else to acquire customers. And Facebook became so expensive and Instagram became so expensive that it's actually cheaper to just go open a store than it is to continue to performance market the crap out of your products and gain customers. You actually lose money on your customer's first purchase and sometimes first 2 purchases. You just literally lose the money. It's gone. Yeah.
I got a question for you.
Yeah.
Because I come from the performing world and I'm still stuck on that. Do you miss the thrill and adulation of the stage, or do you get that thrill through what you do now? Do you ever miss that performing?
Oh my gosh. Yes. Okay. So the just short, immediate answer is yes. There's nothing like having the main rag down and like the audience applauding and then everything gets quiet and the orchestra starts and the curtain goes up. Like there's no other feeling in the entire world like that. However, what I have found, and this is why I love this kind of like bringing the physical manifestation of a brand forward on store opening day. And George, you know this too. I'm sure you felt this. On the day that the store opens, and especially if you're a brand that has a rabid customer base, you know, huge fans, they're going to be there waiting for you.
Celebrities.
It's like a little bit of that feeling, you know, it's a little,
opening
it's not
night.
Exactly the same, but it's the opening night feeling,
Yeah.
you know, where you know, then you have to just like run it day to day. So it's a little bit
So
less.
you still get you get a thrill, but in a different sense.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'd say that first opening day or 2 days, you even forget what time it is, and you're on automatic, and things pop up, and it's just like, oh, let's do this, let's do that, and smart companies give you the agency to do that, to run things the way you think they should be run. They want you to make mistakes, whereas still the majority of companies, especially in America today, it's still very much this procedure, that procedure, that procedure. Whereas there's a few really smart companies that are giving agency to people, their teams, to like, oh, try this or try that. There's a local supermarket chain here in Rochester where one location is in the suburbs and is run a certain way. The other location is more in the city, which I find a little bit cooler. And it's just run where the product is, how the people are, how they manage traffic.
It's totally different.
Selection, it's totally different.
Yeah.
I think so even within companies, there's those issues. But yeah, I think when you give agency to people.
Yeah. And I think, you know, to your point, we've discussed agency too. The reason why I really enjoy working with these kind of early stage direct to consumer brands is because there's not a lot of red tape yet.
Right.
And there comes a point, and usually, not always, but usually it's because of some quote unquote critical hire that comes in that has a legacy background, that comes in and like policizes the heck out of it, which just kills it. And so like, it can't be the Wild West forever, right? Like you can't scale from 1 store to 30 stores and operate the same.
Correct.
That I completely believe. However, you don't have to put all kinds of red tape up for your employees. There are ways to maintain trust and communication and confidence and give them filters through which to make decisions that are still representative of the brand.
And it sounds to me like what you and your company are doing too is you're bringing a competency to companies with a lot of energy. And I've seen this a lot. I've worked in it where in the beginning, to your point, there's an abundance of energy. And it is the Wild West, and it's great, and it's fun, and everybody does everything, and blah, blah, blah. And then it's like, oh, we're going to scale to 30. Well, you know what? You do need to put some competencies in place. You have to put in, like, this is how it will open. This is what we're looking for. We'll set up a hiring thing. Ooh, maybe we should hire a talent person. Maybe, you know, instead of just everybody doing everything and throwing together, like who's going to build our teams? Who's going to build our stores? How are they going to work well together? So you're just adding some competence to all the energy that's there. And I think sometimes companies then go overboard and become, to your point, very institutionalized, where to me, you're bringing competence, but you also know how to balance that with the energy, because you don't want to lose that energy, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And I think a lot of it, frankly, comes down to who's running the company, who are the founders, who are the key stakeholders that are, you know, kind of making these decisions, and do they have the ability to trust and feel confident about the people that you hired those people. I hope that you hired them well. I hope you think they're good hires, right? Like, hope you didn't hire people that you don't trust. So I think it's just at some point, whomever, whether it's like VC money or someone comes in and says you should do XYZ, it's the founders that have the kind of wherewithal to say, yes, we'll do some of that, but actually I don't want to lose the brand in this.
For sure. So I know that we're going to get quite a few emails about this episode, and I know one of the questions is going to be, I want to do what Rebekah's doing. I want to start I want to start my own thing. So whether it's in what you're doing in a different vector, what are one or two things you would tell them now that if someone were to ask you right now, Rebekah, I want to start my own company. I want to start my own thing. We can skip over what it actually does, but what are a few core fundamentals I would need to know, or you think they'd need to know based on what you launched 5 months ago? Because you did a lot of work. You built out a great website. You've got a couple of clients. You're collaborating. You and I are collaborating. So what are some things you could tell listeners now, like
hit us
tomorrow they're going to start? What do they need?
Yeah. I mean, I think the biggest thing, and this was so hard for me because I'm such a perfectionist, is like, don't let perfect be the enemy of good, right? Like, just don't be afraid to ship it. Obviously, things that are well within your control, like don't put grammatical errors up on your website, like those things, like spell things correctly, like all of that, do due diligence on. But like, don't agonize for weeks over the wording of this thing. Like, just get it up. It's real. I am not a web designer. I'm not a coder. I use Squarespace. I'll tell you that right now. It looks like a Squarespace site. I don't care because I don't sell websites for a living. Right. So I don't care if my clients can tell it's a Squarespace site. Right. So, just kind of get to, I guess in our world, George, it's called MVP.
Yeah. Get to
MVP.
Yep.
Minimum viable product.
That's right.
Get to minimum viable product, ship that, and then you can refine it later.
Yeah.
So that's like the first thing. And then really the thing that I've spent the most time on has just been, have I captured what my customers really need? And so it's just, I've spent so much time talking to founders and other retail operators, that are in the space, that just like, what do you need right now? What keeps you up at night? And then really thinking about how those offerings can align with my skill set. Right. Those needs align with my skill set so that I can further refine my offerings.
Right. And you can be purposeful. You're not just going to be they don't want it. Right now, I think companies want purposeful people, not functions. They can hire function, but it's really tough to hire purpose. That's great.
Yes. Yeah. And I guess I would just say the last thing is like, man, it's a hustle. Like, it's not easy.
Nope.
Right? Like, I'm constantly on the phone, constantly emailing, have to send 3 or 4 emails just to get someone to respond once. People are busy. And, whereas before, when I was in-house with a brand, I was on the receiving end of these types of emails, right? Now I'm a little bit more like, oh, this is what it feels like to not be responded to for 4 weeks. And maybe now I'll be a little bit more responsive to anybody who's emailing me. You kind of know.
I know I sure am. I can't agree with you more. One of the outputs of this show that we're doing is when people email in, if they want to be connected to a guest, if they want to be connected to somebody in a different field, we do our damnedest to try to do that. Just today on the car ride here, somebody called in and he had 3 jobs he was looking at. Hey, do you know anybody here? And sure enough, I knew somebody at all 3 of the jobs, and one person responded while we were on the call. So it was great to kind of just, who knows if they're going to get the job.
Even if it's exploratory.
You made the connections.
Right.
Like, there's no reason to ghost people. So I agree with you. And I think,
sometimes.
Well, you know what? Yeah, no, I meant in this, in this vein, because I know, Rebekah, you and I have been busy at other jobs we've had and probably haven't gotten back to people right away. And I think now that we're in this role, it's something that looking back, I would definitely revise that for me if I could. But you learn, and now you do it even more going forward.
No, it's true. I think the pay it forward thing is really critical because I do, whatever your belief system is, I think the universe or whatever you want to call it kind of brings things back around to you. And I've gotten clients through, contacts that I've had for years, and they call me out of the blue like, hey, I think you should talk to this person. And then it turns into a long-term relationship. And so
that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. But back to the ghosting thing. George used to do that when we were growing up in high school. He'd say, I'll be over to get you in like a half hour, and never show up, and you sit home all alone on a Friday night. But we called it dusting back then. Do you remember that?
Dusting, yeah.
Yeah.
Dusted.
You were the king at that.
Oh my gosh. Is that like
Mr. Reliable?
Great.
That's the person sitting on their floor of their room, not dressed yet, going, I'll be there in 5 minutes. I'm walking now.
Right. And then I'd sit home and cry because George never showed up.
Oh, come on.
And make up jokes. See, thanks, George.
Yeah,
George.
See, I helped grow your career.
You did.
I helped grow your career.
Yeah.
It's great. Rebekah, so Rebekah, you've got this company that's starting to grow. You're busy with that, but and I don't know if you want to talk too much about what we talked about last week, but you've also got a couple other things you're looking at. And I think I like to bring it up because I think it's important that even while you're building a company, there's still some fun things on the side that you do that actually help you as you build your company, because you've got something fun that you're passionate about on the side. So is there anything you want to,
let's hear it.
Anything you want to talk about?
Yeah. So actually I was put in touch with and have become now good friends with a former Juilliard student.
That's great.
And he's a dancer. He's been in Broadway shows, etc. He had this vision. It was really his vision to make this online studio environment, because everyone, I try to take ballet class, I move my table and roll out some Marley floor that I bought, and in a 6 by 8 foot square I try to do turns, and sometimes I hit the wall. A lot of times I hit the wall, so everybody's trying to figure out how to be themselves and do the things they love for mental health purposes and physical health purposes. So he is creating this website, and he kind of needed an operator, and I have some experience with back end, not hard coding, but integrations.
Sure.
So I'm helping with that. It's called Arts Palette. It's artspalette.com, PALLET. And we have 3 instructors so far. We've been live for about a month. It's going really well. We're just, the response from the dance community has been thank you so much. We try to make the classes very interactive. There's a 25 student maximum so that the instructor can give you personal attention. We're very selective about who teaches. We eventually want to expand to voice and theater and all of that. But honestly, had I not done this entrepreneurship route, I would probably never have said yes to this, which is just another thing to be, be open to the universe, right?
Yeah. Be open to it, because by doing some great work and by building your company, then this opportunity came up, and you can kind of, again, it's all about this transferable skills, and you just find those that are transferable, and you find a way to contribute, and then that contribution becomes more purposeful as it grows and goes along. And I think Arts Palette could be, you're not doing it for it to be big, but it could be bigger than you're imagining.
Right. And I'm that person who sees it 5-10 years in the future, and I'm like, this is awesome. It's going to be a platform for all the dance studios, and we're going to have all these great, whatever. And we're just okay, wait, back up, baby steps. But I think you're absolutely right. Whether it remains a small passion project or it blows up and it becomes something bigger than even what I think, it's well worth it, because I'm just learning so much and stretching myself.
Yeah. No, it sounds like it.
Yeah, good for you.
That's
this
good.
Is
probably one of the most dynamic guests we've had on so far in terms of self-taught and building.
Right. Yeah,
it's great. Did you have a question? Or?
No.
Oh, great. I wanted to kind of wrap up with, I like to ask this question towards the end. If someone were going to write your story up until this point, is there anything you'd want them to exaggerate or revise as part of your story? It's not about regrets. It's about, because I don't believe in regret. It's about, it's just, you know what I mean? Is there something you would have done sooner, later? You tried something, I probably wouldn't have tried that. If they were making,
make it good.
Yeah. If they were doing if they were doing a remake, what would you change in the remake?
Give us something juicy.
Right.
Yeah.
Gosh, man, I also don't believe in regrets. So I don't think of things in those terms. I think very much in terms of learning, which I don't know, maybe that makes me deluded, but
no, I'm talking to Mr. Delusion.
I'm right here too.
So at one of the brands that I worked at, it became pretty apparent to me after maybe 12 months that I really was not happy. Just for several reasons. It just wasn't a fit. It was I love their product, still in fact, love the brand, but just wasn't a fit. I stuck it out for 6 more months, and then I ended up getting fired from that brand.
Okay.
And that was really, really hard. And I think because of, there was a lot going on at this particular brand at the time. So there was restructuring and blah, blah, blah.
Sure. But still,
I remember when the initial shock wore off, I thought to myself, like, I should have, this is going to be the best thing that ever happened to me. Right. And in a lot of ways it was, but like, I remember thinking I have wasted months here.
Right.
And I should have left a lot sooner.
Yeah. And then you're, and you're like, wait, you can't break up with me. I'm going to break up with you. Right. And wasn't that the situation? You wanted to leave them.
It's so funny. Yes. Because that's, I remember so vividly the day that it happened. I was thinking, you know what? I'm not going to quit right now because, they were like, it was going right into a busy time. And I was like, this busy time will be over in 2 months and I'll just wait it out the 2 months. And, then I'll quit. And it was like, nope, the universe decided I was done then.
Yeah.
That's
a burn.
And so it was so hard. And then I remember even just like feeling ashamed for so long and like listening to people like Sarah Rabo-Hagan who have been very vocal about their own personal stories of rejection and getting fired from multiple jobs. And, and so it took me a long time to really be able to kind of come around to like, one, I can talk about it.
Yep.
And two, it was really a good thing for me. It was really hard, but it was a really good thing for me on a growth standpoint. And I think honestly, it set me up for the trajectory that I am on today. So
that's great.
Yeah.
So it's almost like keep it in the story, but just even talk about it more. Because not many people like to talk about that. So I appreciate the vulnerability. I think we've all gotten to a point, especially the three of us here, but I wish more people would be more vulnerable. It's like, people get fired. Michael Bloomberg was fired 3 times.
Yeah.
Oh, he's okay.
Yeah.
He turned out all right.
Doing all right.
Yeah, he's totally fine.
Yeah.
It's much more common than you might think.
Yeah.
People just don't talk about it because it's stigmatized.
It is. And we've got to get over that. It's like, okay, this didn't work out. Let's find a place where it works out. I mean, as long as you weren't, stealing or harassing anybody, it's like,
yeah, they call it a layoff to make you feel better. But I was like,
but I'm holding a box of my stuff.
Unless the company like folds or an entire department closes, which is not what happened in my situation. I was like, when someone doesn't want you to work somewhere anymore, you're fired. So, I was like, okay, now I have to really like deal with that.
Yep.
So.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like being in a relationship too. If it's just not working out, why force it? It's okay. And it's just that initial blow to the ego. We've all had it. And then it's like, and then when you have time to digest everything, it's like, you know what? It's like, why waste the time? Just move on to the next thing. This wasn't a right fit. Don't try forcing it. Just move on to the next thing.
Yeah. Just keep moving.
Yep.
I hear you.
Chugging along.
I love it.
Yep.
Rebekah, wow. Thank you for being so vulnerable. Thank you for sharing your story. I know we definitely will want to have you back on season 2 this spring to get updates and see where you've gone from there. I will be forwarding questions that we get from our audience. Remember, guys, just reach right out to us at george@curiouslygeorge.com and send us your stories and any questions for our guest, and I will filter them and get them to the the right person. But Rebekah, thank you so much for today.
Thank you, Rebekah.
Make sure you give us all your information. We've got Kondrat Retail. We've got
Arts Palette,
KondratRetail.com,
artspalette.com,
KondratRetail.com, artspalette.com, and we'll do all the Instagram and social media connections on the CuriouslyGeorge.com website. So you have all that information available to you. You can reach out directly and hey, you might need Rebekah for something. So we're all about that. We're all about that networking. So Rebekah, have a wonderful holiday season. It's so weird to say that, but yes.
Especially since it's 70 degrees.
I know, 70 degrees. 70 degrees in November.
Well, it's raining now. It's coming down, the temperature.
Yeah. Okay. But again, thank you so much for being, one of our first 5 guests on the show.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's huge for us. So
thanks for having me.
We really appreciate it.
Get back in your bunk bed.
All right.
Okay.
All right. All right. Bye,
Thanks,
Rebekah.
Bye.
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 See what I like like I said earlier, I love the fact that people are pivoting and finding new ways to go about life. And I think that's, a great takeaway from a lot of these chats.
Agreed.
This is great, you guys.
Agreed.
This
It's like
super fun.
that linear pathway doesn't really exist anymore. And it's like you start one way and then you get to that point of you know, some of our guests have talked about the fear and you're just like, okay, I'm going to do this and it's going to be all right. It may not work the first, second, or third time, but eventually it will work. So instead of following that path of, you know, go to school, get married, get a job, it's like, no. Like, hey, be an entrepreneur first.
Give it a shot.
Yeah. That's right. Go on stage, be a comedian, do
be
whatever you want to do. Be a ballerina.
Be a ballerina.
Be a comedian ballerina.
You
continue to dance into your late 30s.
That's right.
And cry.
on your hardwood floor.
That's right. And then build
Don't die.
Yeah.
Fall into the wall.
Hit the wall a few times,
Exactly.
but then build something out of that. I love it. All right, folks. So we all want you to have a happy holiday too.
Happy holidays.
We'll be back every Thursday through the rest of this year. So
that's right.
Make sure you subscribe and listen in because you just might learn something. And remember, you don't need a title to lead or a linear path to succeed.
Say goodbye, George.
Bye, George.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.